Well, the council leader said it was the hardest decision he'd ever had to make, but he did it anyway. Somerset County Council voted through millions of pounds worth of cuts this week to avoid going bust. But will it be enough? Robin Markwell reports.
A new political season, but the same old refrain. This was Wednesday outside County Hall in Taunton. Council workers gathered, a final futile attempt to stop £13 million being slashed from the budget.
Morale is very, very low. People are very worried and concerned, but they're also angry. They're angry that this is being done to them. It's very draconian in the way that it's being pushed forward.
The long list of cuts includes slashing funding to the county's citizens' advice bureaus, reducing support for vulnerable children, gritting fewer roads, and 130 jobs lost.
It is, though, the most difficult set of decisions that we will ever have to consider.
The Conservative council leader said the model for funding local government was now broken. Emotional at times, he said he felt abandoned by Westminster.
When I am awake at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm thinking, how do we get us out of this? And I'm thinking, I can't without being absolutely brutal with our services, which, let's be honest, that's what we've been today. When I have those thoughts, I'm thinking there is no alternative because there is nobody else coming to rescue us.
As many councils in the West teeter towards effectively going bust, Northamptonshire has already gone over the edge. It made the front page over the pond. In the end, the government took control. 2 men from the ministry sent in to try to balance the books. All spending over £500 now crosses their desks. A county no longer trusted with its own affairs. Northamptonshire and Somerset have a good deal in common. Both are Conservative-controlled counties, both have kept their council tax low, and both have struggled to contain their spending in children's services. But Somerset's budgetary black hole is some £11 million. In Northamptonshire, it's much more severe, upwards of £60 million. There's unlikely to be any bailouts from government. Instead, it insists there has been a real terms increase in funding for councils, but many say it's simply not enough.
I think it's a very real risk that local government across England is facing its biggest catastrophe in its 150-year history.
Big reforms lie around the corner. The county and district councils here will soon be abolished in favour of single unitary authorities. It's a money-saving tactic also being considered in Taunton. Meanwhile, the public is getting by with fewer services. In Northampton, all bus subsidies have now been cut, prompting pensioners to blockade the town centre.
What is the point in issuing bus passes if you haven't got a bus to use it on?
That's right. It's like we've said, they've taken our buses off, but they're not cutting our council tax.
It's buses today, libraries and children's centres too, and deeper cuts lie just down the road. A warning light from the East Midlands, Somerset is desperately keen to avoid.
Well, to discuss that, we're joined by Tom Baldwin, who's a campaigner from the Trades Unionist and Socialist Coalition and a former candidate for Mayor of Bristol. But first, let's come to our other 2 guests. Sarah, are you pleased that Somerset is towing the line and imposing these cuts?
Well, I hate to see any cuts at the local level. I mean, I think this is where you see the legacy of Conservative austerity laid bare, and you see it laid bare at the front line, where you can see the similarities closer to home for me in Swindon, where we're looking at a budget deficit now of £3 million because we can't deliver children's services, and it's things like vulnerable children who are, if you like, expensive for local councils.
The answer?
Well, the answer is that the government funding to local councils, i.e. that the settlement for local councils needs to go back up. That if it's impossible for a council to balance its books, even when these councils now, most of them are only delivering the statutory requirement, they've got rid of libraries, they've got rid of children's centres. If they cannot deliver for vulnerable children and adults, they need more from central government, and it's as simple as that.
Mark, the head of Somerset County Council there, almost in tears this week. He feels abandoned by central government. Why isn't the Prime Minister and the Cabinet intervening?
Well, look, I think they are intervening because we've set out a number of measures which will help local councils. So, for example, my own local authority in Gloucestershire is one of the areas where we're piloting business rates retention, which is where councils can keep more of the money that local people pay into the coffers locally to pay for those important public services. And we've gone through this same process in Gloucestershire, which we started a number of years ago, and that council's got an impressive record of financial grit.
Why run down local services?
Well, the fact is,
what's in it for anybody?
All of government, there is no money that... It all comes from the public, and government has to live within its means, as individuals do.
But this means taking money away from young carers. I mean, they put it off, but that's what they want to do.
So one of the things that councils have to do... Well, look, I'm not going to get into the individual decisions. One of the things that councils have to do is look at the priorities. My own local authority in Gloucestershire asked the public what their priorities were, so they chose to focus on adult social care for older people and those with disabilities, and children's services. Those were the areas they prioritised, and I think they were the right priorities. It's not easy, but we're doing a number of things. We've allowed them to raise money for social care from the council tax precept,
You've taken away the government has taken away £90 million from Somerset in support.
Yes, and that's why we've allowed councils to raise money from taxpayers
but it's not working.
for social care.
It's cutting through on the most vulnerable people in Somerset, isn't it?
Can I add, it's a false economy, David. When you cut money from things like children, from Sure Start centres, you then see the cost of children's services go up because those children have fallen into crisis where they wouldn't have done if the money had been spent up front. It's a failure to invest, and that is why austerity has failed.
The Labour solution is put up taxes, take money away from hard-pressed families
well, the money's already
to spend on the politicians' priorities.
In conservative administrations like
Okay.
Swindon, money has gone... Taxes have gone up.
Tom has been waiting very patiently here. Well, you've heard their solutions. One, live within the means, and second, more money from central government. What's your answer?
Well, I think there does need to be more money from central government. I think that the level of cuts that councils have faced mean that even if you budget as well as you can and you prioritise as well as you can, there's still not the money to provide the most basic, vital services that are needed. And councils like Somerset, like Northamptonshire, I think are outliers of what other councils are going to face in the next few years. So I think councils themselves need to fight the government really for more money, make a demand that money is restored. But in the meantime, they have powers that they can use, including the use of reserves, of borrowing powers, to try and balance the books, to try and...
Do you think the books should be balanced?
I think, if the books aren't balanced, then that gives an opportunity for the government to try and remove the democratically elected council.
Because at one stage, weren't you calling for people not to set
I think if there is no option but if the choice is don't balance the books or make the cuts, then you should pass a deficit budget.
Effective bankruptcy?
No, because I think it should be underpinned by the government. And, as has been said, there's a huge amount of money has been cut out of local councils by the government in the last few years. It'd be 50% since 2010 of the central government funding that's been cut. And in that time, they're obviously facing an increase in the spending pressures as well as one of the things
how much should the council tax go up, do you think?
I don't know that the council tax should go up. I mean, one of the things we've seen
this is free money.
No, because if you look at where the government is spending the money nationally, then they've been able to cut taxes for corporations, while ordinary people face cuts to jobs, to living standards, and to services.
All right, Mark, take that point up.
I will. Yes. Well, this is the central issue here about the. It's interesting that Tom's acknowledged that the money has to come from taxpayers. But let me just pick the corporation tax point up. We've cut the rates of corporation tax, but we've actually raised more money from companies, which is what's important. Taxes are not there to punish people. They're there to raise money for vital public services. We've cut the rates. Economy's growing faster. Companies pay more taxes, and we've raised more money.
When will austerity end?
Well, look, we've got the public finances now under much better control than we inherited. We are able to cut taxes for ordinary people. We've cut taxes by the personal allowance. Wages are rising faster. What we've done for local government, we've got a new settlement coming out this autumn.
Yeah, but when will austerity end, do you think, for local government?
If by austerity you mean people have to live within their means, people will always have to live within their means, just as families at home do.
What it means is the closing of children's centres, the closing of libraries, the failure to pave roads.
Austerity does not mean living within your means. That's budgeting. Austerity is making cuts to services that cause deep and lasting damages to people who are paying their taxes. And taxes have gone up, certainly in Swindon, where an extra tax has now been levied so that things like the bins can be collected and, play parts can be maintained where they haven't been taken away. Austerity has a legacy of creating higher costs for the future. We have got a national debt that's higher than it was when the Conservatives came into power.
Would it be lower under Labour?
No, they want to borrow £500 billion
Would
more money.
the debt come down if Labour were?
They want to borrow £500
if you
billion
invest for the long term, the economy will grow.
OK. We're running over. But thank you for that, Tom. Thank you for your input there.